Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shootaround. I'm the only host of this podcast, Rudy Saint-Claire, and joining me, as is tradition above me, back to tradition, fellas, we got the one and only Rusty Buckets and the legendary AlexHoops. Fellas, we doing all right today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah,
I'm alive.
Yeah, no, we're feeling good. We're using a new streaming software, so if any weird hiccups happen, let's blame it on that and not me. In the chat today, let's see if we got anyone already chit-chatting. We got Larson, so thank you for Larson to being here. And if you want to listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, please be sure to do that. Just search the Shootaround. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your shows, be sure to subscribe to also Rusty Buckets on YouTube so you can catch these shows live and join the chat like Larson. Fellas, is this the best preseason that we've ever had? Or do y'all not have any memory of any other preseason? So it's just the best and worst by default.
I only have maybe one memory in total of the preseason, and it's something that I always bring up. Probably the only preseason game I ever will bring up is when the Bulls played the Hawks in 2014, and Jimmy Butler had like 28 points and hit a game-winning three. And as a 14-year-old boy, I knew that the most improved player all-star season was coming for Jimmy, and it did.
Maybe I'm tripping, but wasn't that didn't you make a video referencing that about Jimmy Butler, or is this?
I've definitely talked about it at some point.
Okay, excellent. Alex, how about you? Do you have any fond preseason memories, or is this the only preseason that exists in your brain?
The only thing that sticks out when I think about preseason is I just remember Talen Horton-Tucker going off in preseason, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's going to be amazing," and then he was at best fine, maybe, and then now he's kind of just not good.
Is Talen Horton-Tucker a guard or a forward? I've always been confused about that. He seems like an oversized guard to me.
He has the arms of a wing, but the body of a guard.
Pretty sure he's going to be a cashier soon, so I don't think it really matters what position he's at.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I'm calling this the best preseason ever, other than by default, because me personally, I don't have any preseason memories myself, is that Jordan Poole had 41 in 3 quarters. Steph Curry hit a game winner, and we're getting the debut of Victor Wembanyama against NBA talent. So really that trifecta really carries this preseason to actually be something worth watching.
Didn't I don't know if it was Ben Wallace or it would have Ben Wallace would have been too early, but I know there was just a dunk that Kobe had in the preseason that when he was young. That's the other preseason thing that I can think of because it was at a college campus. But
I vaguely know what you're talking about, but I can't think of it, the specifics.
Yeah. This isn't even like a memory. This is more like a YouTube short that's been put in front of me so many times that I haven't memorized. But Steph Curry talks a lot about Kobe going full court press on him in the preseason and
I remember
knocking down some stumbly 3-pointer on him. But besides that, my only memory of preseason is Victor Wembanyama making behind the passes and nutmegging fellas.
Probably the best preseason game I've ever watched was him versus Chet.
Yeah, that was insane. That whole game was just weird.
There are regular season games that do not hold the entertainment value that game had.
I mean, it's just
JJ Redick basically said Chet's gonna piss a lot of people off this year and throughout his career because apparently he definitely talks a lot of trash, which I did not know that about Chet. But yeah. JJ was I have multiple people say that he doesn't hold back in that regard, which I
definitely saw that clip. Yeah, I think in the clip he said something along the lines of like, "I know Chet's going to be good because he's an asshole."
Yeah.
In other words, he's got that dog in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Jacob, you're an honorary OKC fan now.
Honorary. I think I just am an OKC fan.
You're
Well,
fully
I mean,
converted.
You're a bandwagon. Let's call a spade a spade.
Okay, you were still a 41.
I was trying to give you honorary, and you wouldn't take that. So
You were still a 40-win team. Like, it's not that bandwagon. It's a preemptive bandwagon. It's a speculatory bandwagon.
it's an investment.
Yes, right. Trying to get in at the right time. I very much enjoy the young OKC roster. I think I put out a tweet about a box score that they had where the scoring distribution among the starters was just so even. And like the way that the roster is constructed, there are enough guys that can like create and play finish extremely well. And I really like teams designed like that. I love that team a lot. And Chet has honestly been even better than I expected him to be. I don't imagine his numbers from the preseason will quite translate because that'd be pretty fucking ridiculous. But definitely not going to be one of those rookies where you're like, oh, he's not making all that much impact right now, but wait till you see. Like, I think he's going to make a ton of impact right out of the gate.
Yeah, I tweeted out, and I'm actually gonna have it in a video that's hopefully coming out tonight. I tweeted out the stats that he's put up through preseason so far, and I'm not exact with these. I'm just going off the top of my head, but it's like 18 points, 5 rebounds, 1.7 assists. He's shooting like 62% from the field and like 55% from 3 on 3 attempts a game. Granted, sample size is super small, but he's doing all of that in 21 minutes a game. So like if you turn those into per 36 numbers, like that's ridiculous. It's like 20 points, 9 rebounds, and like over 2 blocks a game. Now, I'm not saying he's going to average that in the regular season. That's ridiculous. He might. Anything's possible, but I don't see that happening. I think his preseason production is actually like what he might actually do this year. Like to me, 18 points might be a little bit high. I think maybe anywhere between like 15 and 16 points is where he'll probably fall. But like 15 points, 5 to 8 rebounds a game, 1.5 blocks, and like really good shooting. That seems super realistic to me.
Yeah, his outside shot seems very far along. And especially when he doesn't hesitate on it, because I know that's been a thing with him. But like when he just takes that shot immediately when he has it presented to him, it looks very, very good.
Yeah. And if you watched like any of the summer league, like last 2 summer leagues where he's played, he's still been good, but like he never really looked super comfortable. It still looked like he was trying to get his legs under him. And then now in preseason, like it's an entirely different player. He looks fully comfortable.
Well, it's also the matter of like having this like real NBA talent around him. Specifically as a big man. Like obviously there's the drawback of you are playing real NBA competition, real NBA defenders that you have to deal with, but there's also the trade-off of you're getting a real offensive set, real plays actually being drawn, real players around you that will find you when you have made an advantage. And I think that's the same reason that Wemby has looked considerably more comfortable than he did. Granted, it was 2 summer league games, but that's a big thing. So I guess we can move on to Wemby now, because he's the headliner. He's the thing that's really. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I also wanted to press Alex about Chet a little bit more, honestly.
Okay. I thought we squeezed it dry, but apparently not.
Did you, when we were interacting on Twitter yesterday, I think, did you pick up on my subtle shade regarding Chet? You tweeted those stats that you were talking about earlier, and you said that per 36 his rebounds get up to about 9. I gave you a Jaren Jackson Jr. gif in response saying, okay, girl. It's because those per 36 rebounding numbers look exactly like Jaren Jackson's. But, it's a three game sample size or whatever, so it's definitely not comparable. But
see, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s per 36 numbers might be 9 rebounds a game, but Jaren Jackson Jr. has never averaged 9 rebounds a game. So like,
Right.
I don't care what the per 36 numbers say. He's not doing it. But
Right,
and
right.
that's for people get really hung up on the Jaren Jackson Jr. rebounding numbers. It really doesn't surprise me like a ton. Yes, he's not necessarily like a skilled rebounder. Like rebounding is a skill, but also it's kind of like the Russell Westbrook thing with like his rebounds. It's like Russell Westbrook got a ton of rebounds because schematically they were trying to get him rebounds so they could initiate transition offense. With Jaren Jackson Jr., he's playing next to Steven Adams, and like he's also playing next to John Moran, who's another guy who likes to initiate transition offense. So when you're playing next to Steven Adams, who's going to get a ton of rebounds, and you're playing next to John Morant, who's also going to be getting rebounds to initiate offense, there's not a whole lot for Jaren Jackson Jr. to get. Does he need to be a better rebounder? Absolutely. But that being said, I really don't think that like his rebounding numbers are a huge issue right now, considering who he plays next to.
Yeah, and as a Grizzlies fan, I definitely tend to agree. But that's aside from my like overly charitable attitude toward.
I think it comes down to what other players you have around that player. Like you can concede weaknesses if you're filling the gaps elsewhere. It just entirely depends. Like, are the Grizzlies a team that struggles to rebound? Are they losing series because they're not rebounding? Not really. And I don't think Chet is like someone who would be less, less valuable than if he could average 15, that'd be great. But like shit, as long as you're just getting the rebounds that you're supposed to get and everybody else does that, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah. Rebounding seems like often like the most overrated box score statistic. Like PER, infamously not a great all-in-one statistic, and that is mostly because it sort of fetishizes rebounding a little bit. Like if you're Clint Capella, your PER is going to be through the roof, but if you're Jaren Jackson, it might not show up as much. Jaren put up a career high in rebounds last year with 6.8 per game, with that being one more than the previous season, in just one more minute of play as well. But if Chet Holmgren is going to be similar to Jaren in that regard.
Did you just say it again? You're just going to let him do that?
Did I say Green? I didn't. I sincerely didn't mean to say Green.
You said it in a way that you weren't even trying to like say it, but then you just actually did go with Holmgren.
No, it's a sincere mistake. What can I say? But if Chet isn't a stellar rebounder, do you think that's going to hold him back in his career, or do you think that ultimately it's not going to matter very much because he's so skilled in every other department as far as rookie big men go?
OKC's roster is like very rebounding by committee, so I'm not worried about it at all.
Yeah, I feel like rebounding is like a really old man thing to complain about.
Offensive rebounding is a different story, but like defensive rebounding, I think it's like I don't really care a whole lot. I mean, it is important to a certain extent. But it more from like when it comes to defensive rebounding, that's definitely more of a team thing. Offensive rebounding is where you get into like, skill and effort. It's like that's something you can control very specifically, whereas defensive rebounding, it's like more of a game plan thing where like this guy's going to be the one like going for the board on defense.
It's also worth mentioning that like the more traditional archetypal rebounding big has become more or less extinct in the NBA, if that's like really just the only thing you're bringing to the table. And that's because with modern basketball, there's a lot more deep shots. Long shots tend to lead to long rebounds. So there's less of a just every rebound landing in the hands of the big man every single possession, because at best it's a 15 or at most it's a 15-foot jumper. So the higher volume, you got long shots, higher volume of long rebounds, which ultimately comes down to just whoever can chase that shit down.
Yeah, which is definitely a facet of the game, which has changed a lot over time. You go back to the 90s, and I'm sure the number of long rebounds is cut in half at the maximum. It's probably more like cut into a fourth.
Well, also it's not just it's just also the pace as well, as they're taking so long into the shot clock for there to even be opportunities at rebounding.
Right. I wonder what the guard rebounding numbers from like the 70s when the pace was still high, but there was no 3-point volume compared to today. But I suppose that's more of a deep dive style topic where we can't really get into it here on a live podcast. But we were going to break down a little bit of a Wemby film, courtesy of the resident Wembenyama expert in film breakdown extraordinaire, the legendary Alex Hoops. Alex, what's your curation of clips looking like?
I'm also realizing that this is not going to translate well at all for anyone who's on audio. So if you're on audio and you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to enjoy this episode that much.
You might want to hop onto the live. I mean, most of our people are on live, so.
Also, I hope we don't get we shouldn't get copyrighted for this because like we're not even playing audio. The clips are like less than 10 seconds each, and also like whatever.
Yeah, they have this beautiful Premiere Pro interface around it. It should help disguise the copyright bot from it.
I don't know how people do like how during a game they can like slow down a clip in real time and they can like draw on it and stuff. I really want to find out what they use to do that because I feel like that would be super useful for the podcast and for my own purposes.
Yeah, it's probably like
if anyone in the chat knows what that is, let me know.
Probably some like $10,000 a year software.
Well, I've done research on it, and there are softwares that do it, but they're like $10,000. I can't afford that.
Right, barely got synergy in the budget. But yeah, if you're listening at home, please tune in to also Rusty Buckets on YouTube so you can see this film breakdown for yourself.
Yeah. Somebody just called us boomers in the chat, and I'm like, what have we done that's boomery besides talk about rebounds? I guess that is a bit of a boomer topic.
I mean, on the internet, we are mid-20s to late 20s at this point, so that's pretty old for the internet.
That's not old.
It is for the internet.
Yeah, everyone online is in high school. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
Anyways, so let's get into this. I'm sure some of you guys saw this. I tweeted this clip out, so if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen this already. But you haven't seen it get broken down in real time. So, but the Spurs defense was like the thing that probably stood out to me the most from the game last night. Part of the issue is that the Rockets offense just isn't very good. But it definitely made the Spurs defense look incredible. And then also you just have the fact that Wemby is Wemby, and then like Vassell and Sohan are both good defenders in their own right, particularly Sohan. But anyways, Amen, I don't know how to say it the right way, but Amen Thompson has the ball. He's bringing it up the floor. Sohan's going to be guarding him, and like Wemby being pulled this far up is ridiculous. Like they have a 7'2" or 7'4" player all the way up here, guarding all the way out here at the perimeter. And I understand that they have Zach Collins here. So it's like, yes, they have a center, but it's ridiculous that Wemby's capable of guarding out this high. But the thing to pay attention to during this possession is these three, because they're going to lock up this entire part of the court and just shut down everything that the Rockets try to do. Anything above the free throw line is just basically off limits. So initially, they're going to try and get the ball to, I believe that's Whitmore. I can't see the jersey name, so if I say someone's name, and but they're going to try and get the ball to Whitmore at the elbow, and Vassell's just going to poke it away immediately, and the ball pops back out to Amen. And then Sohan, like I obviously he's a rookie, not Sohan, but Thompson. Obviously he's like a little inexperienced. Well, right. It's funny you say that, because what happens next is a backcourt violation gets called. And then Sohan gets in his face and starts causing problems.
So what's with I've heard that Jeremy Sohan's been playing point guard. I haven't really paid that much attention
he?
to the lineups that they've been running, but that's
It,
super interesting.
ain't he like a power forward and not in like the Ben Simmons way, but
Well,
like
I
a
mean, if you look at the lineup that they have right now, Amin is the point guard of this Rockets lineup, and Sohan's guarding him, and they have Zach Collins and Wemby out there, and Keldon Johnson, who's a small forward, and Devin Vassell, who's a shooting guard. I mean, I guess you could technically list Vassell as the point guard, but it's essentially they got a bunch of big forwards out there. Big being an understatement for Wemby.
Yeah, I from what I saw last night, and I didn't really have a ton of film on it because it was like, yeah, he's a decent passer, but really the thing that I'm more concerned with is him like being a ball handler.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that he like can't pass, it's just being able to develop a possession off the dribble is probably more what I'd be concerned about. But he looked fine last night. And I guess I didn't realize this. I've always thought kind of highly of Trey Jones, but I don't watch as much San Antonio basketball as a Spurs fan does. But apparently Spurs fans are like, yeah, Trey Jones is not the point guard and he shouldn't be. He should be the backup point guard. And even then, apparently they're not the biggest fans, which is news to me.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, obviously I'm the biggest Tyus Jones stan on planet Earth, but Trey Jones obviously comes from the same family. It's a big basketball family, and as far as I've heard and what little I have seen, he plays pretty similarly in that he's like a generally conservative point guard who's looking to make the play first rather than to score for himself or anything like that.
From what I've seen of Trey Jones, I'd say he's a better and a more interesting inside the arc scorer than Tyus Jones. Definitely more aggressive in that regard. However, Tyus does have the outside shot. And I say this pretty much all the time. Like, if you're a small guard and you do not have a good outside shot, your value is immediately very, very limited. And there's been hopes that he would find that shot, but if that doesn't happen, he's probably just going to be a pretty damn good backup for his career.
Yeah, he's also like super small. It's just anytime you're that small of a point guard, you have to be insane at other things to really stand out. But maybe the Sohan thing works. How old is he? That's the thing that is like, as far as development goes, what's the ceiling like there? Oh, he's only 20. I guess I didn't realize he was that young.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's the case, shoot, you got plenty of time to develop.
Point guard of the future, Jeremy Sohan.
Yeah, but
he definitely has very
not
good,
necessarily like an easy thing to develop.
He definitely has very good passing instincts.
Wait, hold up. Jeremy Sohan is Polish? I wouldn't have guessed that in a million.
Born in Poland, but I don't know if he I was, because like Austin Reeves is German, but like I know his like grandma was German or something like that, but he was just born over there because of the military or something like that. Like, I know there are examples of players that are like not American, but their like family just lived on a military base somewhere.
Gotcha. According to Wikipedia,
I don't know if that's the case for him though.
He was born in the United States to a Polish mother and American father, raised in England where he played youth basketball. International man of mystery, Jeremy Sohan. Wow. Man, I had no idea. I wonder why he doesn't have a British accent.
That's a good question. Because if you were raised not in America, it would make sense that you wouldn't have an American accent.
Yeah. Maybe he was just housed with his American papa his whole life and got his accent from him. But let's get back to this film. Stop talking about countries so much.
Yeah. We kind of strayed there a little bit.
That's podcasting, baby.
Yeah. Y'all don't want a pod. So this is another defensive possession. And like, really, there's not a whole lot to say here other than just like pay attention to Wemby, because if you want to talk about a guy being everywhere on a possession, like he initially shuts that down and he's forcing him baseline. And anytime you're closing out baseline like this, there's another clip where I noticed something along these lines of a Heat player attacking a closeout against the Spurs. And one thing that I think players make the mistake of doing a lot is when they close out, they'll angle to where their right foot is their front foot. And the issue with that is they can attack to the right instead of having to go baseline, and you're just giving them more space to work with. And Wemby doesn't close out with his right foot in front. He closes out with his left foot in front, and that's going to force a baseline drive instead of a drive towards the middle. And it just leaves you a lot less susceptible to not being able to recover. Because from here, if you're forcing a guy baseline, unless just absolutely elite, getting from here to the rim, you're not going to be able to do it as quickly and as freely as if you were going this way, because there's just less space. You have to be a lot more conscious of where the line is. You have to make sure not to step out. We see guys step out on baseline drives like this against a closeout all the time. That's why you normally try to close out with your left foot in front like he does here. And the result is it just shuts down the baseline drive. He doesn't even think about it.
I did not mean to cut you off. I thought I would just add it to the bank of screens that could be shared, but I had to go back and check on Jeremy Sohan's accent, and he does in fact have a British accent.
For that long, so it's just getting back to the rhythm and
the rhythm. But yeah, I will stop sharing now, so you can get back to your screen sharing.
A little too
Sorry
personal,
about
man.
That
I was going to say, because where it looked like, because it's really interesting, this happens a lot of the time with film breakdown, where I feel like you pause on a certain frame and it looks like that person just has a free lane, and then unpause and immediately it's gone. Because I'm thinking, like, where he was at there, he could just, if he just got enough pressure that Vassell had to help over, there's nobody in the paint to stop Thomas Bryant. But, Wemby shut that off in a split second.
Yeah. And actually, this is a funny frame to pause on, because Jared Vanderbilt did something against the Mavericks towards the end of the regular season last year, where there is kind of a strategy here where, say, Kane decided to drive right and try and get around Wemby. So one thing that you can do, but it holds like an inherent amount of risk, is Jared Vanderbilt, Josh Green drove on him to the right, and Vando was in a position where if your back is to them and they're driving right on you, you have to flip your hips like 180 degrees. It's a very difficult thing to do. If you think about like stand in a defensive stance and then think about trying to flip around like that, it's very hard to do, especially like in a basketball game. It's not something that's going to happen immediately. A lot of guys just simply aren't athletic to do that in a way that allows them to recover. But in this instance, I have a feeling Wemby could probably get away with it, where the play that I'm thinking of, Josh Green drove right on Vando, who was in this kind of position. And instead of trying to make that hip rotation, Vando instead just rotated this way and kept his body angled towards the baseline and ran alongside Josh Green. Instead of having to make that 180 degree hip rotation, he only had to make like a 90 degree rotation to go towards the basket. But what that leaves you susceptible to is, say this ball handler, whoever it is in any instance, say they recognize that your back turns to try and go towards the basket and stop the drive. Well, you can just stop dribbling, and all of a sudden they're stumbling towards the basket and you have a wide open shot. So it's not always effective, but it is something that you can do. But in this instance, it doesn't matter, because I believe, they just try to get into a dribble handoff for Duncan Robinson, and Wemby, lo and behold, is right there to shut that down. And it culminates into really nothing.
Yeah, and he's able to rotate. He's able to show on the Duncan Robinson, like getting on that corner so that he doesn't like immediately pull up, because like where Malachi is, that's definitely a shot that Duncan would take at times, just falling out of the corner. But Wemby's there can fucking block that in that position because he's ridiculous. But also has the ability to immediately, once he's realized Duncan's not going to shoot that, cover the roll man. I don't remember what his name is, but
I think it's Jamal Cain. I could be wrong.
yeah.
I
And then
don't know.
Sohan's also in good position to help him if he's out of position, but he can immediately get right back to it.
Yeah, and also like this kind of pass from here to Kane, who's like technically the roll man in this instance, even though like there is space here, it's just Wemby's so long that like that's not against someone like Sohan. Say Sohan's in Wemby's position right now and Wemby's somewhere else on the floor. That kind of pass is like feasible. You can make that pass because there's space, but Wemby's wingspan takes up way too much space that this pass becomes inherently more risky. And that's just what makes him such a dangerous defender. And the fact that he's mobile enough to have started out the possession back here, close out to the perimeter, shut down Duncan Robinson there, and then recover back out to the weak side. And now he's going to be the kind of roamer down here. And Drew Smith dribbles. And I think that's Haywood Highsmith right here. He's going to make the baseline cut.
This is the blocked floater.
Yeah. So Drew Smith's going to make a pass to Haywood Highsmith. Wemby's right here. Starts out right here.
I went to middle school with a
Pass
kid named Drew
right
Smith.
here. Highsmith gets the pass right here. Wemby is under the basket. And it gets blocked. He's under the basket. Highsmith is not even in the paint. And Wemby blocks him.
I feel like, maybe if you got like a really skilled passer, there's like a pass to Thomas Bryant there, but that's not something you're going.
It'd have to be a bounce pass because you're not going over Wemby. You'd have to go around him off the ground.
I was thinking more of like a wraparound, but Jeremy could potentially poke at that.
Right.
But he just sucks up all the space because like that shot by Highsmith, I think it was made perfect sense for him to go with that. That made all the sense in the world, but it doesn't make sense with Wemby on the floor.
Right. And there's only 4 seconds on the shot clock, so that's all they had anyways.
It's almost like Wemby is doing double duty on defense as both the roamer a la Giannis and the rim protector a la Brook Lopez. It's like he has enough speed and size to where he can just be both at the same time. Am I mistaken for that, or is that a reasonable impression?
I mean, plenty of shot blockers are also roamers, that's kind of in the same category.
Yeah, it's like basically he just doesn't have a set matchup. It's more of like, whatever the right rotation that he's supposed to make, that's where he usually just ends up. But I think he'll be in a similar realm of rim protectors of like Jaren Jackson's, where they may be defending a pick and roll and they may be on the perimeter when ball handlers in the paint going up for a shot, but they're just fast enough, and Wemby's going to be, obviously has the wingspan to recover on stuff like that and block shots. It's just when you're that tall and that mobile, it doesn't really matter. You can get from point A to point B fast enough that it doesn't really matter who you're on. It just matters where you are when the shot goes up.
Gotcha. That was a good detailed answer. The one you had there on the corner way earlier in the compilation of clips gave me some type of thought, but I've lost it now that it's not on screen. So just move on. Forget I said anything.
Ruin the offense now?
Yeah, we'll do a little bit of offense. I believe the next 2 clips are kind of showcasing the 2-man game between Wemby and Vassell, which I think, when you talk about the Spurs not really having a point guard, this is kind of where that discussion comes into play, because I think the 2-man game of Vassell and Wemby is just going to be so strong that it's like Chris Middleton and Giannis in the sense that like you can have a point guard on the floor next to them if you want, but you don't really need it because they're both good enough ball handlers that Chris Middleton can be your pick and roll ball handler and Giannis can be your center. It's like, what use is a point? Wouldn't you rather just have like shooters around them at that point?
Yeah, because I'm looking at this lineup here. Like, if I'm the Spurs, Jeremy's not a strong outside shooter. Malachi Branham isn't really either, and Tyus Jones definitely isn't. Like, I'd rather just have Trey Jones. I'd rather Trey Jones just be somebody who can hit a corner three, especially if he's not even going to have the ball in his hands to begin with.
Spurs should sign Kyle Korver, confirmed.
Bring him out. They already have Doug McDermott, right?
Yeah.
What is Doug McDermott but Kyle Korver, you know?
Well, he's not, but
yeah. Also, I'm not going to look it up just because I don't want to, but someone in the chat find out how old Doug McDermott is because I feel like he's like 40 at this point. He's got to be old.
I'm going to guess he's 32.
He's probably like just turned 30.
He's a Thunder legend.
He was
31.
He spent 3 years in college and was drafted in 2014.
He was drafted in 2014?
Yes, because the Bulls picked him up. I remember.
Dude, I feel like he's been in the league forever.
Well, that'd be 9 years.
He feels so much older than he is.
Yeah.
Dougie Buckets.
I guess I'm just getting old.
Got drafted to the Bulls like the 10th pick, and they didn't play him at all his rookie year because Tom Thibodeau sucks.
Coach of the year, Tom Thibodeau.
Twice.
I didn't realize that. That's not good.
Once with the Knicks.
Once with the Knicks, once with the Bulls?
Yep.
Yeah. Good for him, I guess.
NBA champion.
Same amount. Pretty sure he has the same amount of Coach of the Year awards as Greg Popovich, and more than Spoelstra.
It's just insane.
Didn't he date like Kate Upton at one point?
Tom Thibodeau?
I'm pretty sure he had like a supermodel girlfriend for a while, but then he like broke up with her because he was like, I'm pretty sure he was like, ball is life, and I don't have time to like have a woman.
It can't be Tom Thibodeau who did that. There's only so much money he can do.
I'm like 90% sure he like called off an engagement because he was like, I got a ball. Sorry.
It can't be a supermodel because a supermodel also has money.
Wait, you don't think Tom Thibodeau's a handsome man?
No, not even a little bit. No offense, Tom, but like he was apparently built to coach basketball.
According to datingcelebs.com, he is currently single. Let's see. Basketball Network has an article with the headline saying Tom Thibodeau never got married because he was too obsessed with basketball.
It's something on his Wikipedia page says something about it. But anyways, back to the topic at hand.
I found a quote.
Oh my gosh.
They canceled the wedding about 6 weeks out, and Thibodeau's mother made him return all the gifts the couples had received. Reason for the engagement's end varied, but John Glaris, Thibodeau's boss and athletic director, told him, "There is no room in my life for a woman. I'm going to be a basketball coach."
It's just married to the game.
That's pretty real. Rather than just like put a woman through an unhappy marriage, he's just like, I care more about basketball than I care about you.
To be fair, this was an engagement out of college, so it's also something that
could have been a convenient excuse.
Yeah. I'm also seeing a 5-year-old r/NBA post referencing the New York Times where it says that in college he dated 2 women named Debbie at the same time, known as D1 and D2 for short.
Yeah, that's on here too.
Man, Tom Thibodeau. I had no idea he was like that. I guess I should have
This man's just slanging wood and drawing up X's and O's.
Imagine tuning into the podcast right now where we have like preseason film pulled up and we're talking about Tom Thibodeau's love life.
Talking about Tom Thibodeau slanging wood.
That's
What just
that's why you went to 10% on
Yeah.
instead of fit on Premiere.
There we go. Oop. There we go.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to the topic at hand. It was a fun little tangent. Anyways, I believe I'll have to see how the possession goes, but I believe Wemby and Vassell are going to initially just get into a dribble handoff. Yeah. And like one of my favorite things in the NBA is anytime you have a center and a guard or a ball handler where like you do a dribble handoff and then you just immediately get into a pick and roll. I think it's like one of the most effective things because like not only does a defense have to navigate the dribble handoff, but then they subsequently have to navigate the pick and roll and figure out how they're going to cover that. And it's especially difficult if, and I'm not sure if Wemby ends up doing it here, but the dribble handoff initially started with Vassell coming off the screen this way and coming this way. But when the screener can flip the screen, it creates another issue because obviously the defender is trying to fight over the screen going this way. You flip the screen, they have to shift their momentum and go this way instead. And then you also have the other defenders on the court trying to decide, hey, are we going to help off the strong side corner? Where is Duncan Robinson supposed to be in this situation? It just creates some issues inherently.
Yeah, I think the best types of offenses, the when you're doing your job right, you're making the defense ask a lot of questions and make a bunch of decisions in a short amount of time. And if you're hitting them with like boom, 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 you have to make this decision, this decision, this decision. It increases the likelihood that they'll make the wrong decision, and you can take advantage of that.
That's why they call it an advantage. Anyways, so this screen, this is also like a little bit of a, I don't want to say it's probably not illegal, but it's pushing the rules of like a moving screen as far as you can push them.
That's
so
Warrior
screen. Yeah, the screen's like set there. That is the screen. And then like this is technically a rescreen, but also like, you know, you could maybe call this and you might make some people mad, but it is a little bit of a cheeky move where he shifts a little bit from here to there, but he gets away with it.
His foot is barely planted, maybe at the same time he makes contact with him the second time. So, like, if they called it in an NBA game, it would feel like one of those early season calls where the refs got notes over the offseason and have been told to adjust the game accordingly. And
by the time they get to the postseason, that shit's not going to be a problem.
Right. The memory on refs appears to be very short term.
Yeah, the one thing that I noticed with Wemby in general that probably the biggest problem area for him, specifically in regards to big man stuff, was that his screens in general were pretty weak, which led to like slip opportunities and stuff like that. But like sometimes you need to get contact on that screen. And he probably ultimately rescreened, and not even for the sake of an advantage, just because he's like, I fucked that up. Got to do this again.
So Wemby, actually, it's funny you mentioned that about his screens being like, you know, a little softer than you'd like them to be. I actually think that Wemby and Chet are going to be at somewhat of a disadvantage. And it's because in the rule book, wide-based screens are not allowed. You can't technically, you know, spread your legs super far. But for guys like Wemby and Chet, that's a lot more difficult because their legs are so ridiculously long. So it's going to be more difficult for them to set hard screens like a guy like Sabonis or Onyeka Okongwu, where like their legs are a little bit shorter. They're not, you know, 7-footers technically. And they're able to get away with wide base screens because they don't necessarily look like wide base screens. With Wemby and Chet, setting those harder, potentially illegal screens it's going to be a little more difficult just because it looks so much more dramatic than it actually is, just because they're taller.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to be interested to see how that plays out for them. But anyways, Vassell's going to drive off of the screen, and in hindsight, you probably would have just preferred that Vassell take the screen and attack the weak side here, because defensively, Miami is way more equipped to cover this side of the floor than they are this side of the floor. But he ends up dribbling into the strong side, and there's just too much defense that's going to be there. They got 4 defenders on the strong side, and it's just, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, a part of this is, as I mentioned, just 3 not great shooting threats out there next to these 2.
Yeah. Like, that's not Bam. I don't know who that is, but look, ridiculously far off of Sohan. There's just no need for them to cover Sohan, really, especially in preseason. It's like, yeah, we'll give up a Jeremy Sohan 3.
We're just not trying to end up on ESPN more than we have to be from Wemby picking on us.
Well, unfortunately, as you can see, Wemby didn't roll. And that's because he's going to get the ball against Orlando Robinson and just absolutely cook him into a turnaround jumper.
Yeah.
Which, like, it's just ridiculous.
And the little shimmy on that move, too, like, that was like a very Jordan-esque move out of a 7'4" player.
Right.
Speaking of Jordan-esque, we got Dumbo Unchained giving us 30 Australian dollaroos or something like that. Do y'all still have the Spurs? Do y'all still have the Spurs at 28 on the power rankings after seeing this preseason, or is it too early to tell? Let me go ahead and take the film breakdown off screen while we answer this little cue.
Why is it always me? I look the worst.
Vertical.
I still
all
think
right, we'll do the contain.
I still think the personnel, like, as we're talking about in this play, there's that action that with Wemby and Vassell, and then 3 non-shooters out there. Like, I ultimately worry about the shooting that the Spurs have in general. Like, Devin Vassell was the only true, like, plus 3-point shooter that was on the floor with that lineup, and those are all guys that are going to be key members of the rotation. I think the defense is going to be great, and the offense will have important and interesting flashes, but not enough stuff that's like, I think they're still going to be bad because of that.
Yeah, the roster's just not filled out yet. It's we'll see how far Wemby can take them in the regular season. His first year, he's going to be good, but like the rest of that team is just not that great yet.
If the Spurs were in the East, I think this would be a different story. It would be an opportunity for it to be very similar to LeBron's rookie year, where he carries them to like a slightly sub 500 record, if I remember correctly, and they don't make the playoffs, but they flirt with the playoffs. The West is very tough. However, Wemby is very good, and I still have faith that they can flirt with a play-in. But if they got further than that, I would be very surprised. It would take a stellar start and like another lucky hot streak in the middle of the season, maybe a little bit of roster adjustment at the trade deadline or something like that, to where they can go ahead and get a little bit ahead of schedule and not do some sort of quiet half tank where they play Wemby 58 games over the year, lose like 30 plus games on purpose, and then the rest of the losses are organic, just to get a high draft pick or whatever. I do think the Spurs have potential to at least be an interesting team this year in terms of winning, but I don't suspect any actual potential to come out of them just yet. Next year, though, it's probably game over. Just after a year having Wemby under their belt.
If I had to predict, I feel like the Spurs are going to have games where they kind of like show like, look out, give it 3 years and you're going to be dreading this. But right now it's not quite all put together. And kind of in line with that LeBron comparison you make, I've kind of felt like Wemby's going to have like a LeBron Luka like rookie year where it's like really impressive, ton of great flashes, very obvious this guy's the future, but like still not even like all-star quality as a rookie, but then second year it's like, all right, I'm here, everybody. Have fun. That type of situation.
Yeah, feels right to me. I just don't think they have the team yet.
Yeah.
Wemby's great, but you're gonna have to have a better team as a whole, top
We
to
didn't
bottom.
even quite get
take
to
it in the West.
finish the deal with that clip because, like, think
No,
of just
yeah,
how
I'm going back.
ridiculous it
I finished.
is. Think of how ridiculous it is to have a player capable of doing that, and like how high quality of a shot that ends up being for him, given how comfortable Wemby seems to be on those mid-range shots. Because like that is some shit you can get whenever. You can just get that shot all the time. And it's just like that's your offense falling apart still results in a pretty high percentage shot for him.
Yeah, it's hilarious that like if you look at where the ball is relative to the rim, it's like when the apex of his release is above the rim.
It's
Like
just
the ball is
ridiculous.
going towards the basket above the rim.
Yeah,
That's
part of
why,
me wants to get on like an adjusted rim and like measure what the apex of my release is and then just go shoot around on like an 8-foot rim just to get an idea of what shooting a basketball is like for Wemby. But I'd also have to make the ball like 40% smaller as well.
That'd be a great second IRL basketball video for you in your YouTube career. Legend of the chat, Mia Castillo says, Victor is legitimately a spider. Thank you for the $5. Mia, appreciate you and your slightly and frequent comments. Always appreciate your donations very much. What else have we got in terms of breakdown? What besides Victor's crazy high release point? What else is happening here?
This is the last clip of the Vassell and Wemby 2-man game. And this might be the last Spurs clip that I actually have. I had some OKC stuff, some Celtic stuff, and whatever else, but we'll see what we end up actually getting to. But this possession it doesn't really involve Wemby at first, but it's more the way that the possession ends that is wild to me. So Wemby's going to come from the weak side over here, and he's going to get the ball from Vassell. Now, look at how the floor is right now. They've got spacing all around them. Spacing, I say a little generously because as far as 3-point percentages,
Keldon's a solid outside shooter.
Right. My point more so is that like spacing in preseason is kind of more theoretical. It's not like it's not always a hard and fast thing. But in this situation, they actually have really, really good spacing because Wemby cutting along the baseline, while it doesn't necessarily give them like perimeter spacing, it creates a ton of space in here. And what that causes is Vassell, who has a matchup against Şengün, who
he can beat
I'm sorry,
in the foot race.
Right. It's Şengün. Like, come on. It's
your favorite.
Dude, sidebar, I tweeted a highlight of him hitting a really impressive turnaround jumper after like doing some pretty impressive dribble moves for like a 6'10", 6'11" guy to get there. And people were like pissed. I've never seen people so mad at a turnaround jumper in my life. People were quote tweeting it and like, what's his stat line though? Like, yeah, I've seen a billion. I've seen Rudy Gobert do this. And I'm like, I've watched a lot of Rudy Gobert. I've never seen Rudy Gobert do this before. I've never seen Rudy Gobert do an in and out dribble.
Didn't you caption it with something insinuating that Jokic is the only other center you've seen do something similar? Or maybe that's just the name that popped into my mind with the caption you had on it. It was something ambiguous.
It was a specific possession where the only other center in the NBA who was going to be able to do that fluidly and that smoothly is Jokic. And that's all I was saying. It's like, I wasn't saying that he's the only one who can hit a turnaround jumper. It's like, yes, other centers have hit turnaround jumpers before, but doing it leading up to it, the setup was really solid. And like he was dribbling in a way that isn't very common for centers, the moves that he was doing, like, you don't see it very often. It's more of like, yeah, Jokic does that stuff, but that's pretty much it. Anyways, we don't have to dive into that. But yeah,
I do
people were
have
pissed. They were calling for Şengün's head after I posted that highlight.
I do have
You delete the tweet?
Yeah, I took it down. I was like,
Yeah.
I just went to
whatever.
go
I'm
find it.
not giving people the satisfaction here.
I do feel like Jabari Smith would actually be a pretty good choice for defending Wemby one-on-one. Like, no one's going to match that guy in the length department, but Jabari Smith has that and the ability to keep up with him speed-wise as much as you
for
can.
sure. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what their coverages looked like from this game, but hello, Wilson.
Oh, it's a cat time?
Yeah, for those on audio, my cat just decided to pay us a visit. All right, get down. Anyways, I don't remember exactly what their coverages were defensively, but yeah, if you're going to defend with anybody, Jabari Smith is going to be your main guy if you need to put length on somebody, and not just like arbitrary length where it's just a guy who is technically over 6'10". It's like, yeah, Şengün is a tall player, but he's defensively, his length doesn't really matter a whole lot. Anyways, so this play, Wemby gets the ball, and as you might be able to suspect, Vassell is going to be able to cut into this space, and this almost turns into like, it's not an empty corner pick and roll, but it has the same kind of structure as like a empty corner pick and roll where you've got like Vassell technically being the roll man in this instance, and Wemby being the initiator, and it results in just a beautiful bounce pass to Vassell, getting it perfectly in stride. Like, that's another thing I noticed from Wemby throughout preseason so far is his pass placement is really good. It's not like some guys can pass, but their pass placement sucks. So like some other players might make this pass, but Vassell has to catch it out here, or he's got to catch it more inside. It's like in football, when a quarterback throws to their receiver, they're trying to throw slightly in front of the receiver. They want the ball to hit them in stride. They don't want to throw it behind the receiver to where the receiver has to turn around and catch it and then keep running. That just makes it a more difficult catch. Same philosophy applies in basketball. Anytime you're making a pass like this, you want to put it out in front of the guy so it's hitting them in stride. And that's exactly what happens. And then Vassell just does a good job of getting the good finish.
Yeah, I will say there are definitely like, that is pretty heavily prevalent on just taking advantage of the mismatch of Şengün being the guy guarding Vassell on the perimeter. And even then, I think he did a decent enough job recovering to make it a difficult shot, because Vassell, I know, has struggled a bit with like actually finishing through contact. And hopefully this is a sign that that's something that will improve. But that is the thing that stuck out to me so much with Summer League when we saw him in person. It was just like, the guy's making the right pass every single time. And like, I don't know how much from the preseason we've seen him like truly create advantages and then capitalize off of that with like a really good pass. But at least in terms of just recognizing what's happening and making the right play and recognizing that, maybe not creating it, but making sure to finish it. That's a huge thing to have so far along out of a big man prospect.
Yeah. I have more Wemby clips if we want to stay on Wemby. I have other clips of other players.
Tall bastard.
If we want to get into other players to talk about, or I've got some OKC stuff.
Let's talk about some
if we
Thunder.
Want to give it, if we want to give it
Jacob's favorite theme.
I'm curious. This is a question I have for you, Alex.
I'm looking at for a second.
Looking at the roster that they currently have, who do you think is going to be the second best player for OKC 5 years down the line? Is it going to be Chet? Is it going to be J-Dub? Is it going to be Josh Giddey? Is it going to be a secret fourth option? What do you think?
So, in my opinion, that's more of a that's a question that comes down to like who is better and who is more impactful, which I kind of get annoyed with the whole like impact that we've talked about it before. Yeah, it's like we've talked about it enough where, there's not really a good answer right now. But as far as who I'd put money on right now, I would say it's probably Chet. I mean, he will be the most impactful, I think. And then there's just so much upside on the offensive end that you can still feel comfortable being like, yeah, he'll be the most impactful and also the second best. Not most impactful, second most impactful being Shea.
I think in terms of like hierarchy of how the shots go, like Shea obviously is the first guy, both within how the offense is initiated and creating for himself. And then like in terms of their role, J-Dub would do more one-on-one ISO type creating, any type of just like, hey, you take the ball and you go score now. I don't know how much of that they're going to draw it up with Chet. And Chet, though, I think will have the offensive skill set and the play finishing ability, but he'll just get to 18, 20 points just within the flow of the offense without really having to force anything for him, which is great roster construction, frankly. You really want to have those guys that can just, finish plays very, very well. And he's definitely already seemingly a very strong option in that department. So does that mean, now I just kind of want your order. After that, is it J-Dub or Giddey? Giddey's interesting. J-Dub is a more conventional player, I would say.
It's kind of tough because I think this year is kind of where that hierarchy is going to take shape. Giddey is in a bizarre spot because based on preseason, kind of seems like he's going to be doing a bit more ball handling and kind of like being the initiator of the offense and letting Shea like kind of do, not be the second option, but like in terms of, how do I put this in a way where I'm not saying Shea isn't going to be the primary ball handler, because Shea's still going to be the primary ball handler. I just think Giddey's going to end up doing more offensive facilitation. And with that is just going to inherently come more shots.
We getting some Iverson cut type action. I know Rudy's a big fan of those.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I didn't see any in the preseason, but that will probably, the thing with Mark Daignault is I feel like you don't really see the best of coaches in terms of X's and O's until they have like a good team to work with, because you kind of, you got to have the tools, you got to have the paint brushes and the colors to be able to paint a masterpiece, if that analogy works. But I would say Shea, Chet. Right now, I probably lean J-Dub long term as the second guy or third guy. Just because I think offensively he's a bit further along purely as it relates to scoring, but I don't love him as like a shot creator. I don't think he's really there yet. That's not saying he can't develop it, but right now he's definitely more of like a play finisher and like second side creator as opposed to like off the dribble creation, which is fine. That could still be a star caliber player. It's just I'm not sure I'd want him getting a ton of ISO possessions or anything like that. And then with Giddey, it's different because he could be the third guy in a different sense of like, he's the third guy, but he's not scoring as much. He's primarily just facilitating and using like the threat of his scoring to try and open up opportunities and create advantages.
It's kind of a weird example, but I feel like Giddey could be like the supercharged version of like what Nicholas Batum was at his peak, where he did a lot of offensive initiating, but was more of a role player in terms of scoring the ball. I said supercharged, as in better.
This is just a wild comparison.
I think it makes sense. It's like the point forward that isn't really scoring the ball all that much. Like the other example would be like Kyle Anderson. But like, I think Giddey can be better at basically all of the things, other than like maybe spot up 3-point shooting for Batum, for example. But
Friend of the show, Noah Terranova, has used the example like a fully realized Michael Carter Williams. And I think that one's like somewhat interesting. I've also heard like a far less athletic Ben Simmons. And I'm like, yeah, like a 18, 8-8 kind of guy. Like I said on Twitter the other day, it's like, seems fairly reasonable. But defensively, obviously, Giddey's not going to be a huge.
Sky said Giddey is a
presence.
good point forward, but a non-factor on the glass. I don't think that's true.
That's objectively not true. He was one of the best rebounding rookies 2 years ago, and then last year, I think the list of players that averaged
8 rebounds a game.
Yeah, last year he averaged like 15, 7, and like 6 or something like that.
Yeah,
Is that right?
He averaged basically, if you're rounding up, 17, 8, and 6.
Yeah, it's like I think I tweeted early on in the season, or not early on in the season, like probably around the All-Star break. It was like list of players averaging 15, 8, and 7 or something like that, or 15, 7, and 6 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the list of players was like Giannis, LeBron, Jokic, Luka, Josh Giddey. It was like, and it was mainly his rebounds that were juicing him up there into like being able to make that like cherry picked statistic. But
here, let me throw some stats at you. In his last 3 seasons with the Portland Trail Blazers, Nicholas Batum averaged 12, 6, and 5. So ballpark.
I mean, yeah, roughly. I see what
pace,
you're saying.
so.
Right. But back to the rebounding thing. I size wise and like physicality, I guess you can make the argument that he's not like 250 pounds being able to box out guys and like strong arm his way into rebounds, but he has like the nose for it, which I think is you can kind of mitigate the lack of size.
And he's definitely someone
smart about getting rebounds.
He's definitely someone I want getting a rebound and then running up the floor,
Right. Yeah.
Initiating immediately.
Yeah. And for a team that's so like rebounding by committee, the fact that he gets as many rebounds as he does is like, that's impressive in a sense, even though only so much of that is individual production and like a pure skill, but we've already talked about that. Anyways, back to the film. And we won't do too much of this because we're already, time flies when you're having fun, boys. We're already over an hour.
This has been quite fun.
So this play is so much fun to watch, and seeing it live, it was like, oh my gosh, this is why like having Chet just makes everything better for OKC. And it also helps that Milwaukee wasn't playing Brook Lopez this game, but that's besides the point. I still don't think it would have made a difference. Anyways, early offense, Giddey's bringing the ball up the floor, and I mean, he's not even close to the 3-point line. Dort is still getting up the floor, and I think that's J-Dub in the corner. I'm not positive. I can't see very well because
I'm pretty sure that is. It's got the tall socks.
Oh, we're full screen now. So Giddey brings the ball up the floor. I guess I can't scrub when I'm like that. They're going to get into just a standard pick and roll, early offense pick and roll. And because of just the way they're set up right now, like the weak side, they're defensively just not in a great position. Giannis is going to be in the corner, which is where you want Giannis if he's going to be in a situation where he needs to provide help side defense. But other than that, it's like, Dame is right here. If Giddey decides to come off this screen and drive up the middle, you're going to have Damian Lillard providing nail help. Like that's not really ideal in this situation. So Robin Lopez is going to be kind of doing this soft hedge. I wouldn't consider it like a hard hedge by any means, but he's already, because Pat Connaughton's kind of stuck back here, and I'm guessing he's assuming that Connaughton's going to get caught up on the screen. So he's kind of doing the soft hedge, not necessarily worried about Chet. And what happens is Chet just slips the screen. And it happened, it happened fast
So
there. It happened
fast.
ridiculously fast live, where he just slips it. He's gone. Like, having this much separation between the front line in a pick and roll like this, that's exactly what you want out of something like this. Anytime you're an early offense with this much space and the defense is like technically set, but they're not really set that strong, getting into a pick and roll like this and getting to the point where you have this kind of setup is exactly what you want and exactly what you're looking for when you're running early offense like this. And here's the thing. Chet's going to get the ball on the roll. And yeah, Giannis doesn't come over to provide help. Like, theoretically, that's what would happen in this situation. Giannis would be the one coming over and providing that help side defense as Chet gets the ball. For the life of me, I don't really know why he doesn't. But the great thing is that's not even a problem, because Giannis, even if he does come, even before Chet gets the ball and provide that help side defense, what does that do? Well, that just leaves J-Dub wide open in the corner. 3. And Chet's fully capable of making that pass. Yeah. So even though he ends up slamming the ball and you get a nice highlight play out of it, even still, oh gosh, I lost it. But even still, he can make that pass to J-Dub if Giannis does come over and provide that help. And that's just what's so exciting about this team and the way it's set up, is like, when you have this lineup on the floor, I know Josh Giddey's 3-point shooting isn't quite there yet. I think he's going to develop it because OKC has one of the best shooting coaches in the entire league. And J-Dub is a solid shooter. Shea's obviously a solid shooter. And Chet is obviously a solid shooter. The spacing that you're going to have, spacing is one thing. Spacing is half the battle, because if you only have, say, 1 or 2 advantage creators on your roster, then the spacing provides you with a lot of like catch and shoot opportunities, which is cool. That's fine. Yeah, you run a pick and roll, you're going to collapse the defense, you're going to create an opportunity on the perimeter. That's great. Totally fine. However, when you have a roster constructed full of guys that have that spacing ability, and then also have the ability to not just create an advantage, but continue to develop an advantage. So like I said, if Giannis comes over and provides this help, Chet can pass it out to J-Dub. That doesn't necessarily mean that J-Dub has to shoot it. If it was Reggie Bullock out there, or just pick some random spot-up shooter, so Duncan Robinson out there, just arbitrary examples here. A guy who basically like just shoots. Not saying Duncan Robinson just shoots anymore. He kind of used to, besides the point. Say you have a guy out there who just shoots. Their options when they get that pass are shoot it or pass it to somebody else immediately. But you're not going to expect them to do a whole lot. You're not going to expect them to, attack a closeout. J-Dub, on the other hand, if Chet ends up making that pass out there, they can continue to develop the advantage that they got with Giannis coming to provide help. J-Dub can develop that advantage by attacking any sort of closeout that comes or any sort of rotation, and they can get an even better shot out of it. So the opportunities are going to be pretty endless when it comes to having this lineup on the floor specifically, especially if Giddey can develop that 3-point shot and start to develop some better rim pressure like we've seen him do in preseason. This team's going to be insane.
I was kind of having this thought when I watched them last. I watched a good chunk of this game specifically because I like OKC and Dame Giannis. I feel like, especially with this lineup in particular, like it's like when I don't know if I want to compare this directly, but when the Nuggets had Aaron Gordon, and it was like, okay, they just need to figure out that 5th starter and it's over. Like, once they figure out that 5th starter, whatever it be, not Lou Dort, it should be like a bona fide sharpshooter and then someone who will fit in the system that they're trying to run. I would like to see what that lineup looks like with like Isaiah Joe in place of Lou Dort, for example. But I think they just need to find their KCP, and from there, it's just about getting better as the flow of the offense and everything just happens through time.
Yeah, that's the big puzzle piece for sure. I'm optimistic about Case and Wallace, and then honestly, Vasilije Micic. He, I don't think he'll be a starter. He's not going to take Dort's spot. I don't think Kaysen's going to take Dort's spot this year. But like those two guys, in theory, could be those not just spot up shooters, but also like being able to develop an advantage or knock down those spot up shots if that's what they end up needing to do. Dort, I like Dort as like just a spot up shooter and defender, but when it comes to attacking closeouts, he's kind of like a wrecking ball, but the wrecking ball like could go anywhere. There's no telling what it's going to end up hitting. It's like he might get to the rim, but the shot doesn't have a great chance of going in. He shoots like 53% at the rim, which I've talked about this before. Dort statistically was one of the worst finishers in the entire league last year.
Perhaps
I don't have the numbers of that.
As I remember, it was just like hilarious. I don't remember the actual figure itself, but I remember it just being like so low that I could barely even believe it.
Yeah, it was impressively bad. Not to just like bag on Dort here. And he's actually looked better in preseason.
I think current day PJ Tucker is the worst finisher I've ever seen.
That's probably accurate.
I'm pretty sure he shot like 35% at the rim 1 year with the Sixers, which is comical.
It's like me out there.
Right.
Giddey kind of looks like you out there.
Yeah, with the hair. Yeah. I just need to do a little trim.
Much taller, though.
Blast it back. Yeah, like a full foot and change taller.
There's not a whole lot to break down on this play, but I just want to point out kind of some of the strides that we've seen in Giddey's game. Particularly in FIBA, he looked a lot more comfortable dribbling the ball, and particularly in transition, it's like somebody told him, like, dude, you're 6'8" and you have like ball handling skills. You should be using that to your advantage. That's a pretty good skill set to have. And I guess it got through to him because on this possession, everything that he does from this point to the end of the possession is just fantastic. So he's got Connaughton trailing him, and Connaughton with it's either Beasley or Dame here. One of these is Beasley, one of these is Dame.
Yeah.
I can't see their jersey numbers, but Connaughton, since they're in a 3-on-1 situation, they're going to be trying to shade Giddey to the left side so they can have him two guys on this side of the ball, and then Dame can come and cover whoever tries to make a cut or anything like that. But defensively, they're in a good position here, even if personnel wise they don't have great defenders.
Yeah.
So what I love
3-on-1 basically.
Right. So what I love about what Giddey does is he kind of realizes that Connaughton's going to be trying to shade him over this way. So he's just going to use his body to get in front of him and prevent that and keep like a very tight dribble to where Beasley isn't able to swipe it away.
Just going to get him on his back.
No. And he kind of pulls back out a little bit as opposed to just making a beeline for the basket. This is actually something I noticed when I'm watching football with running backs is a lot of running backs will not wait for blockers. And they're very impatient when it comes to trying to get, to the end zone or get to the first down. Some of the best running backs, they wait for the play to develop a little bit so they can find the hole. They're not trying to just punch through immediately. They're like, okay, I'm going to wait and see how the defense reacts to the play that was drawn up. I know what you're laughing at.
We're going to wait and find the hole.
I mean, yeah. Running backs need to be patient and wait for blockers and wait for those holes. Otherwise, they're going to get past their offensive line and they're just going to be in a sea of defenders. You got to wait for things to work out. And that's kind of what I like to see about Giddey is like some guys in transition, they go straight to the basket. They're not thinking about trying to create an angle for themselves. They're not thinking about trying to create a hole for themselves. They're just going right to the basket. And he gets in front of Connaughton, dribbles back to the nail a little bit. He's got Dame and Beasley here, and he just makes a perfect move. Uses that left foot to slice in between them and split them. Kind of muscles Beasley off of his spot, which that's been a problem with Giddey is he's kind of scared of physicality. Bumps right into Beasley, no issue, and then gets the shot to fall.
Damn near elbowed him in the face with that that little move there, bringing the ball to his left side from his right. Like looks like there was about a couple inches of clearance between his nose and the tip of his elbow.
Yeah, he kind of got lucky there, but the fact that he's being this aggressive in transition is just ridiculously promising, because the thing with Giddey is if he can consistently put pressure on the rim, whether it's in the half court or in transition, his passing game becomes fully realized.
Yeah. Well, Josh Giddey, maybe the sneaky all-star of this season. I wouldn't be terribly surprised by that, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's on the bingo card for this year. But if he's averaging a near triple-double, flirting with 20 points a game, I see no reason that he shouldn't be an all-star if the Thunder aren't just surprisingly bad for seemingly no reason. But with that being said, let's move into the Q&A portion.
Getting 2 all-stars pretty difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it would have to be on like a 50-win pace or something crazy like that. Be the 4th 3 seed going into All-Star break.
Yeah, I think they could win 50 games, but
it's definitely possible. Brent earlier in the chat asked, Vic has been great, but I feel like Scoot is gonna pull a Dame and take Rookie of the Year award from a generational big man. I feel like
not while Jeremy Grant's taking shots from him.
Yeah, that really feels like the biggest truth against this. Even more so than that is maybe less focus on Scoot and more focus on Chet. You know, I feel like Chet is kind of the low-key leader for Rookie of the Year this season right now.
I do
have some team success.
I will say this about Scoot is I was surprised by just how truly poised he was. Like he had the feel for the game of like a veteran guard and like made decisions like that. So even if he's not getting a super high hierarchy in the shot department, I do still feel like he's going to get he's just going to do his job and find those opportunities when they present themselves and do it well enough that he will have impressive enough stats to compete for Rookie of the Year. But I do feel like Chet is where I'm going right now.
Yeah. I'm also leaning slightly toward Chet, but Scoot is indeed at least a borderline generational talent. So, you know, we'll see who wins this Rookie of the Year race. Should be one of the best in several years, I'd say. I mean, when was the last time a Rookie of the Year race like actually was exciting and much of
Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell, 2018.
Yeah, probably that, right?
Yeah. The problem is the media seems to decide who's the Rookie of the Year, like in
After
the first half
like
of the
2
season.
months. Yeah,
and then they just stop caring about it, and I think that makes for a pretty boring Rookie of the Year race a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure. The Random Pigs Gaming says, "Is it just me or do the Raptors seem like a 40-win team?"
I'll be real. It's just you who cares.
I mean, maybe if they keep Pascal, they can be a 40-win team.
Yes, they can be a 40-win team.
They are allowed to be a 40-win team. Yes.
Lock it in. Another year of Raptors basketball, baby.
Hiru Baines says, is it reasonable for Jordan Poole to average 28 a game? Jordan Poole but scored 41 in 3 quarters in a preseason game. Is featured in the thumbnail of this video.
I think it is. Who else is going to shoot the ball? Not Denny Adia, that's for sure.
Yeah, he was pissed. Just standing wide open, calling for the ball while Jordan Poole goes off. The man wouldn't pass to Steph Curry. You think he's going to pass to Denny Adia?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not passing to a 30% three-point shooter.
Yeah. Denny Avdia is not good he can play some defense, but he is generally just not good.
Yeah. Jordan Poole had one move during that 40 bomb where I was just watching the highlights on Twitter, and I just made the biggest stank face and weirdest groan I think I've made at a
You're
basketball
talking
game.
about when he pump faked and then like drove inside and then ran it back out to the 3-point line to take a fadeaway 3 over RJ Barrett.
That was definitely in the compilation, but the one I was referring to specifically was like a hezzy dribble where he kind of like looked like he was gonna cross left and then just exploded to the right and just created so much space for himself with a little like 0.2 second fake that it was just disgusting.
No, I think Jordan Poole could put up 28 points. It won't be efficient. I don't think he could put up an efficient 28, but I do think he could get that marker.
If it is efficient, it would be like league average efficiency.
Right.
It would be like just an average 28. But I don't see like
just your average 28.
Yeah, he's not going to be like 60% true shooting or anything like that.
28 is the new 24. It's not what it used to be.
Yeah, geezer.
They Hate Collins says, can y'all talk about how solid Emily Bates looked this preseason? I did not watch any Emily Bates myself.
I can't talk about it because I haven't seen any Emoni Bates.
Yeah.
Did you also say Emily?
Maybe. I was just trying to get these comments.
I saw a little bit from him. His jump shot looked good. But,
So that's the thing for him, right? It's like he needs the jumper to come. He needs a little bit more strength because
the thing is
he's a lanky guy.
It's a shot creator that can't actually hit the shots. That's the problem.
He's also got very short arms. He has a negative wingspan, which for a guy that is supposed to be like a shot creator, having a negative wingspan kind of hurts you. Yeah. Everyone thought when he was in high school, they were like, is this the next Kevin Durant? And then his arms just stopped growing. And it's like, oh, he's 6'8", but his wingspan is like 6'5".
What if Kevin Durant had Blake Griffin arms?
Desmond Bain had ass. But I think between the short arms and like some off the court stuff that happened in college or something like that, his draft stock definitely tanked. At one point, he was looking to be at least a lottery pick, but he fell.
I think his on the court stuff hurt him more than anything off the court did. It was just he just couldn't make a shot.
I don't know about that.
Unless I don't know what his off the court stuff was.
He like almost went to jail for like gun stuff.
But I just remember his fucking college tape being very rough and his percentages being very rough.
Yeah, I mean there were very few things working in his favor. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. Maybe JB Bickerstaff can develop him real nice into a starting caliber small forward for this Cavs team, which is desperate for a small forward. So if Emoni Bates is that guy, then they found a little diamond in the rough. John Monteforte.
Whatever.
Hot take: Dame is one of the most overrated players in the NBA. This might have been true 10 years ago,
Whatever.
But yeah, whatever. These kinds of things are like, why? If you're gonna say something like this, like give a reason. Like, why do you think he's one of the most overrated players?
Yeah,
I don't know.
He's just A- Steph Curry as far as I'm concerned. Definitely been better than Kyrie Irving the vast majority of his career. But speaking of Steph, how many prime years of Steph do we think we have left? I saw some take on Twitter that says something like Steph is going to age more gracefully into his late 30s than LeBron did. It's definitely some Warriors fan ass take. But
I mean he's
why not?
Probably about as good at 36 as LeBron was at 36. So, he hasn't had injury stuff since early in his career, really. He obviously doesn't have a super athleticism-based game, what the very loose metrics of what we mean by athleticism. And I don't know. I think he's already not as fast as he used to be, and he's still devastatingly effective. So I feel like he could even lose another step in terms of speed and still be a very, very effective player. I think it's very likely that he will still be a good player at the age of 40.
Imagine
Yeah,
Steph Curry at the age of 47 just standing in the corner waiting to shoot a 50% three-pointer.
Yeah, I mean, I've like he'll be able to hit a corner three until he's 65. Like,
yeah, and he can play as long as he wants. It's just when it comes to a guy like Steph, it's like, yeah, he can play forever. It's just whenever he decides to hang it up is how long he has left, because he'll probably be able to find a roster spot. Prime years, it's probably 5, 4, 3. I don't know.
2?
What do you mean by prime? Yeah.
like let's say just like MVP caliber player. Like, I think he could be that up to like 39.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but like
That's just
37, 38. He's 35.
I'm pretty sure he's born in February, right?
I don't know. That off the top of my head.
It's Stephen Curry's birthday.
He's born in March, so he'll be 36 once the postseason comes around. So yeah, like I'd say then he's got 3 more years of MVP caliber play.
John gave us another comment, and thank you to Noah.
See, what do you mean by that? No, he doesn't.
Why are you even pulling up this comment?
Well, because I saw a little bit. I mean, obviously we saw flashes of Ben Simmons looking a little bit more aggressive again, doing some cool distributing with some flashy passes. But when you actually look at the numbers, he's averaging basically exactly what he averaged last year, plus more turnovers, and I think 1 more assist and 1 fewer rebound, just like 8, 6, and 9 or something like that. Fellas, how much do we believe in the Ben Simmons comeback tour? We believers or we haters? Personally,
I mean, he still doesn't shoot the ball. He's still like not even looking to shoot, but like he seems more aggressive.
I mean,
turnovers have been a bad problem, though.
There were a couple of drives that I liked from him. I do think he was like maybe like 10% more looking for his shot, but it needs to be more than that. I think at the bare minimum, we just need to worry about, is he like a truly effective player, truly like a big positive, and like I still think he can definitely be that. And also, like at this point, he's fallen so far. It's hard to imagine going anywhere but up.
Yeah. As much as I want him to succeed, it's not looking good just based on preseason. Obviously, it's preseason, which some players look really good in preseason and then suck in the regular season. Some players look terrible in the preseason and then are great in the regular season. But Ben Simmons in 22 minutes a game has averaged 6.5 points on 48% shooting from the field and like 57% shooting from the line.
Dude, the amount of people I saw a bunch of posts that was like a wide open dunk and transition with him, and it was like the caption was Ben Simmons is back. I was like, Ben Simmons has always been able to dunk a wide open dunk. I don't know what that means. It's more so like, is he going to try to get into the teeth of the defense?
Asher gave us $2 to shit talk Jacob, saying,
not even true.
Why is Jacob so inefficient in 2K?
I beat you by over 20 points with lag.
Now listen, I'm the neutral party here because you both are in on the 2K runs, and y'all, to the people listening right now, I've never heard anything with more just like passive aggressive, like low key toxicity than these guys playing 2K together. It's just the most like, I want to tell this person that I hate them, but I'm not going to, and I'm actually just going to tell them to pass the ball next time. And it's like, y'all seem so bitter. I stopped getting in Discord because of it. I'm just like, they get so mad at each other. I can't listen to this. It's entertaining for a little bit, and then it's like, oh wow, this is like, they're really mad about this.
I blame Desmond Novak personally.
Yeah,
Desmond. Yeah, Desmond, you are not guiltless in this.
Desmond is the biggest, easily the biggest. I get
FaceTime calls from Desmond. He's like, "Oh, Jacob was doing this in 2K last night, et cetera, et cetera." I'm just like, I know I'm only getting half the story here.
Mhm.
He's like, what he didn't tell you is
He
that his shot
insists
meter
that
is
he is
broken.
open 24/7, and it's so fucking annoying. Anytime I don't hit him, he's like, Jacob, I was wide open. And meanwhile, he's got fucking 4 defenders on him.
Shoot or shoot, man. Pino says, what do you guys think of Blake Lively and how his preseason will translate?
She's
to
a beautiful
the
I
woman.
think
She's a
she
beautiful
was
woman.
pretty good in that movie where she gets bit by a shark.
I'm sure she's a very good wife to Ryan Reynolds.